and yet they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they're starting to reveal their fangs. What I showed you from George Bernard Shaw, the eco-monsters, the baby-mothering lady. Again, let me show you the eco-monster advertisement from here in New York. All of this might sound evil to you. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's not wrong, but this is evil. It is evil. How much more do your neighbors need before they start to wake up and start reading? Stop name-calling and just look at the facts. Let me go back to this, Rules for Radicals. Do you remember the dedication in the book, Rules to Radicals? It is this, quote, "To the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer." A book which is featured and highlighted on the NEA recommended reading list now. Saul Alinsky, quote, "Simple formula for success: agitate, aggravate, educate, and organize." That's up on the NEA website. You know, it's really strange. One of the early famous slogans for the Fabian Society was educate, agitate, and organize. May I ask, are you beginning to see why I have said the 40-day and 40-night challenge is important? I believe we are facing evil. Not that these people are evil, but why else do these people be in wolf in sheep's clothing? My grandma, what big teeth you have. The response was, yes, the better to eat you with, my dear. I started the top of the hour with problems, lots of problems. All of these problems that were on the website today, just economic problems. But don't you understand? All these problems are leading us to ask the kind sheep for the solution. All right, I want to show you a couple of things that I think are going to take your breath away in the direction that we're headed. I'm going to warn you that there is some disturbing video in the next 10 minutes, and if you have small children in the room, please have them leave the room, turn the TV off, or pause the TiVo and watch this segment first. I want to show you first an interview on the BBC of respected advice columnist and TV pundit Virginia Ironside. I want you to hear what she said about handicapped babies. This was yesterday.
I think that if I were a mother of a suffering child, I would be the first to want, I mean a deeply suffering child, I would be the first to want to put a pillow over its face.
Dr. Peter Evans
as I would with any suffering thing. And I think the difference is that my feeling of horror at suffering is much greater than my feeling of getting rid of a couple of cells, because suffering can go on for years.
I'm sorry, I was just about to introduce another guest there, but that's a pretty horrifying thing to say, that you would put a pillow over.
Of course I would, if it was a child I really loved who is in agony. I think any good mother would.
That's going to cause some shock amongst people.
I don't know any mother who wouldn't say that if there was nothing else that could be done, and it was
just not true.
Do you think that mothers would agree with you?
I think a lot would. Maybe not any, but a lot.
She'd be the first to put a pillow over the face of her baby if she was suffering and smother a handicapped child. Then she referred to killing a human baby as getting rid of a couple of cells. Who are these people? And you don't have to go overseas to find them. We are growing new ones at an alarming rate. Peter Singer, he is the DeCamp Professor of Bioethics at Princeton University. He has proposed that parents who are not happy with their newborns, perhaps because they're disabled, but you can do it for any reason, should have the legal right to kill their babies up to 28 days after birth. He even goes on to suggest that there is nothing morally wrong with killing even older babies before the point at which they become self-aware, which is usually around 2. We're teaching this. These are the same people. This is the same beginning of the same trail that led to trouble and awful things in China and Russia and Germany. People that said it was humane to put people out of their misery in their arrogance. Notice that it was Ms. Ironside that wasn't even aware that she said something, as the host put it, what was it, pretty horrifying? Listen again.
I was just about to introduce another guest there, but that's a pretty horrifying thing to say, that you would put a pillow over.
Of course I would, if it was a child I really loved who is in agony. I think any good mother would.
This woman isn't even apologetic. Who is she? Well, in addition to being a columnist and pundit, she's also was the secretary to Dame Shirley Williams, who is working for the far left-wing group, the Fabian Society. What's the Fabian Society? Well, it's a socialist group in Britain. We've shown you and talked about the Fabian Socialists before. People like George Bernard Shaw. Remember, he supported eugenics in killing members of society who are not deemed productive enough. So you know the Fabian Society is the English version of our progressive party in America. It is the same root of a rotted tree. Just like Hillary Clinton said, she's an early 20th century progressive. Same people. Another progressive video that will quite frankly shock you, as it should, when we come back. This morning when I got up, I checked theblaze.com, which is a news and opinion website from me, and it is, I saw that video, and it is available, the video I just showed you about the lady at the BBC. That happened yesterday in Great Britain, and I want you to send that to every friend you have. You go on theblaze.com and get that video and send it to everybody. Wake your neighbors up. But there was also on the page, and they still are there, some videos that I'm going to show you next. Again, watch your children, watch this before your children see it themselves. If I wanted to make a video showing what the progressives really are, show their real maniacal face, and show that when it comes to the earth, they're eco-fascists, I would make a commercial a lot like the one I'm about to show you, but I didn't make it. The eco-fascists did, in their arrogance. And they didn't have a problem with it, at least until people saw it, and then they went, why? Why do people have a problem with this? Again, extremely disturbing and graphic. Here it is, ran in England. Watch.
Right, kids, just before you go, there's a brilliant idea in the air that I'd like to run by you. Now, it's called 10-10. The idea is everyone starts cutting their carbon emissions by 10%, thus keeping the planet safe for everyone, eventually. Now, this hasn't got to be a huge thing, but I would love it if you and your families would think about doing something.
What sort of thing, miss?
Well, like getting your dad to insulate the loft, or taking your next holiday by train instead of flying, or buying energy-saving light bulbs.
We're thinking of using our car less. I'm going to cycle to school.
That's fantastic, Jemima. Now, no pressure at all, but it'd be great to get a sense of how many of you might do this. Just a rough percentage. That's fantastic. And those not? Philip and Tracy. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. Your own choice. Okay, class, thank you so much for today, and I will see you all tomorrow. Oh, just before you go, I just need to press this little button here. Now, everybody, please remember to read chapters 5 and 6 on volcanoes and glaciation.
Except for Philip and Tracy, of course.
.10 founder and filmmaker Franny Armstrong explained why she would do an ad like this. She said, because we have about 4 years to stabilize global emissions, and we're not anywhere near doing that. All of our lives are at threat, and if that's not worth jumping up and down about, I don't know what is. Is that a nudge, or is that the beginning of a shove? You're going to have to decide. There's more to this ad, and it's disturbing connections here at home. Again, I want you to share that ad. They tried everything they could to scrub that from the internet. We got our hands on it, and it's at theblaze.com. There's 3 other ads like it. Send it to everyone you know. More disturbing connections from that ad over in Great Britain here, and I'll show those to you next. Right before the break, I showed you a disturbing ad from a group called 1010global.org. But we went to this website, and we looked for their partners. Who's partnering? We tried to do some investigation here, and we found this one. It's 350.org. If you click on 350 and you scroll down, 350.org, can you click on it? Click on it, and now scroll down. You'll see their updates, and you will also see, oh, the 10-2-10. They are a partner with the One Nation Rally. One Nation Rally, of course, was the group of radicals this weekend. Radicals, environmental revolutionaries, and communists that endorsed, I guess, what's left of the Democratic Party and the president. And the president has endorsed the rally. Please go to theblaze.com where you will find these videos, the woman advocating smothering suffering children, and the eco-fascism clip. I want you to send them to everyone you know, and join us back here tomorrow for much, much more. Hello, America. I want to talk to you tonight, and again, I want to lead with this. Do not ever, please, ever take my word for anything. You do your own homework. You look it up. I wouldn't have believed these things 3 years ago. When I found them 3 years ago, I thought this book must be crazy, or this historian is nuts. No. It is all there. Just nobody ever pieces it all together because the progressives control our history in our schools. But all the documentation in their own handwriting, in their own words, you'll see some of it tonight, it's all there. In the next hour, you're going to hear some, quite honestly, horrifying comments and beliefs. So incomprehensible, I think, to the average American, and so graphic, and so far below the lowest standards of humanity that you might think that I'm reading from a Stephen King novel. But these are real people expressing their real beliefs, and they are not monsters. They are not evil. It's what they believe, and they really, truly believe they're being compassionate and doing the right thing. Tomorrow I'll explain a little bit more about that, because we have to get to the mindset. But today we're going to find out, what do they say, and how did they get here? I warn you, some of the clips you're going to see tonight are graphic and disturbing. I want to start with a clip that we showed you a couple of nights ago. Journalist, columnist, and author Virginia Ironside. She was on the BBC this last Sunday, and she made this stunning declaration on the BBC.
If I were a mother of a suffering child, I would be the first to want, I mean a deeply suffering child, I would be the first to want to put a pillow over its face.
Dr. Peter Evans
as I would with any suffering thing. And I think the difference is that my feeling of horror at suffering is much greater than my feeling of getting rid of a couple of cells, because suffering can go on for years.
I'm sorry, I was just about to introduce another guest there, but that's a pretty horrifying thing to say, that you would put a pillow over there.
Of course I would, if it was a child I really loved who is in agony. I think any good mother would.
This is horrifying on so many levels. The way she casually describes suffocating an infant is something any loving mother would do. She's not a monster, she's not evil, she is doing what any loving mother would do. Of course she would smother her child. Also the way she refers to a baby as a couple of cells. Perhaps most shocking of all is the fact that she doesn't even realize that what she's saying is that controversial. I am a father of a child of special needs. My daughter has taught me more about life and God, I think, than any other one person, and she's done it without ever trying to. She's taught me more about myself. She's taught me more about compassion. My daughter is, she has cerebral palsy, if you met her, and you most likely wouldn't know. She's brilliant. But it's been a struggle. And I can't imagine a world without her. I'm convinced when I see people that have been labeled retarded by our society, that when all is said and done and we get to the other side, we'll find out who the retarded ones are. It will be us. Our priorities are wrong. And I don't think God will put a pillow over our face and smother us. We'll learn. All right. So here's a mother saying that, of course, all good loving mothers would smother their children. If they were in pain, it's out of compassion. Now, let me switch gears slightly. This is another clip from England. We'll get to America in a second. This one is from the environmentalist who believe that if we don't act within 4 years, there is no reversing climate change. So they want to warn you. Well, they've already tried to warn you about this, but now they need to kick it up a notch, because a nudge isn't enough. Now maybe a slap across the face. What you're about to see is very graphic.
We're thinking of using our car less. I'm going to cycle to school.
That's fantastic, Jemima.
Take it full, please.
No pressure at all, but it'd be great to get a sense of how many of you might do this. Just a rough percentage.
That's fantastic.
And those not? Philip and Tracy. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. Your own choice. Okay, class, thank you so much for today, and I will see you all tomorrow. Oh, just before you go, I just need to press this little button here. Now, everybody, please remember to read chapters 5 and 6 on volcanoes and glaciation.
Okay, so remember, they believe in Saul Alinsky, the ends justify the means. They thought this was okay. Nobody said this would be a bad idea until it hit the air. And then when people freaked out, then they said first it was a joke. It's not a joke. They have now come out and said, look, there's only 4 years left to act. We had to wake people up. Okay, well, what if there's only 1 year left to act, or a month, or 10 days, or we're a year behind? What do we do? If you literally believe the world is doomed unless we act, and you've devalued humankind, what is drastic to you? I mean, we've already seen the environmentalists. They've already destroyed careers. They want to ban people from getting a meteorology license unless you agree with them. Anybody in business who speaks up against them, they are deniers, they're destroyed, they're discredited. You know, you're a Holocaust denier. Well, when those nudges don't work, what is next? Hey, I know. How about if they send skeptics to court? Could you do that? How about imprison people who deny global warming? Would you execute them? I know you wouldn't do it with a little button. You couldn't, but this sounds implausible, doesn't it? Sounds ridiculous? Let me show you something from theblaze.com. Here's a story that is on there today. They have begun gathering a list of all those ridiculous, implausible ideas that have been said by environmentalists recently. Remember, the ends justify the means. They're saving the planet. In June of last year, liberal blog site TPM posted an article and then quickly had to take it down when people started to protest that read, quote, "At what point do we jail or execute global warming deniers?" In 2006, the eco magazine Grist called for Nuremberg-style trials for skeptics. In 2008, The Guardian reported that NASA's James Hansen called for the trials of climate skeptics for high crimes against humanity. That's a NASA official. In 2008, Canadian environmentalist David Suzuki called for government leaders skeptical of global warming to be thrown into jail. In 2007, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said of skeptics, "This is treason. We need to start treating them as traitors." Well, there's more, including the environmentalist that said, "Soon another generation will come and strangle you in your beds." Find it at theblaze.com. We have trials, we have prison, we have treason, we have execution. Oh, and then we have that joke on TV that basically shows that. Oh, and then another person talking about smothering their own baby or a couple of cells with a pillow because it is the loving and right thing to do. These are not lone, isolated incidents of raving lunatics. I'll show you in a few minutes an ad that is running here in New York that will boggle your mind. It would be horrible if these twisted ideas came from the mind of raving lunatics. but they're not. They're very rational people who just believe in things that are different than you. Where did these ideas come from? Well, you can find them all from the same place. Progressivism here in America, Marxism overseas, and Fabian Socialism in Australia, New Zealand, England, and Europe. They're all the same thing. They're all the same stock of people. I've talked to you a lot about progressives and Marxists, but Fabian Socialists, look them up. You will be astounded what you find. It's all the same pool of people. The Fabian Socialist was a society that was founded in January of 1884. The members sought to influence public opinion on socialism. But what made them unique was, at the time, if you wanted to be a socialist, you needed a mass revolution. Well, they preferred the selective education. Selective education, you see it here beginning under the Woodrow Wilson administration. It was the education of the powerful few, especially those in government and the media, who could lead reforms in government. It is why our media is so screwed up, and they all think alike. Their strategy is called the doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. What does that mean? The doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. Let's say you say to your wife, hey, honey, I want to rebuild an engine in the living room. She's not going to do that. She's going to say, what is wrong with you? But if you believe that that is what needs to be done, you want to be able to watch the football game while rebuilding your engine of your car, and you want to do it in your comfy lazy boy, what do? Well, you can do one thing. You can drag the engine into the center of the living room, and then she goes nuts. Or you can just bring a spark plug in and just leave it on the table till she stops noticing it. Then bring another one in, and then another one, and then another part, and then another part, and the carburetor. Pretty soon, you got the whole damn engine sitting in there. She'll tell you at first, can you stop? Can you stop with them? Can you take these away? You just leave them there. She'll forget eventually, and she won't notice that you have all of the parts of the engine that you're going to build there in the living room. It becomes inevitable because you can say, it's already here. The doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. Okay, now why the name Fabian? The Fabian Society. Well, this is after General Quintus Fabius Maximus. He had a brilliant strategy. He advanced in his battles not through front-on battles, but instead through harassment and attrition. In other words, he wore everybody out, almost like overwhelm your opponents, overwhelm the system. He would just constantly wear them out and just hit them, little ones, hit them, until finally they were just worn out from the harassment. And then it became inevitable. Gosh, is it becoming inevitable that we just can't get out of this debt bubble? Little step at a time? All right, Fabian Socialist, one of the early members was George Bernard Shaw. This is a man who is highly regarded still to this day. This is a guy who won a Nobel Peace Prize, who won an Oscar. The BBC described in this way, a iconoclastic playwright, journalist, a scintillating public speaker, arts reviewer, and campaigning socialist. Well, here's what everybody ignores from Shaw. This. Watch.
Just put him there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social vote, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us, and it can't be of very much use to yourself.
It's not useful to you or to the society. It's horrifying stuff, yet I guarantee you your son or daughter has never heard a bad thing about this man. He's critically acclaimed by the establishment. It may be tough for them to swallow, but he is a monster. No one talks about the genius of Hitler's good ideas like the Volkswagen. The good ideas don't balance out the bad ones. The man was a monster. Shaw was a famous playwright, But he was also a strong believer in eugenics. It was George Bernard Shaw. Ask yourself if you ever learned this. Ask your kids if they learned this. Who dreamt up the gas chambers, the death chambers? Who did? George Bernard Shaw dreamt them up to get rid of the undesirables. Quote, a part of eugenic politics would finally land us in an extensive use of the lethal chamber. A great many people will have to be put out of existence simply because it wastes other people's time to look after them. I don't care that he wrote witty little plays. The man was a monster. All of this stems from the same place. Fabian Socialists, Marxists. And what was it that Hillary Clinton called herself during the campaign when she was embarrassed to answer if she was a liberal? She said this.
I prefer the word progressive, which has a real American meaning, going back to the progressive era at the beginning of the 20th century.
At the beginning of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century, and it came roaring into America at the beginning of the 20th century. They believe in what's good for the collective. They're also secular humanists. God at best is something to hang on to just in case. They are the people that you must have evolution. You must have evolution. If you can take God out of the picture and have evolution, then this is all okay to do it. When you think the way these guys do, you tend to dehumanize individual situations. Suddenly, you're convinced that it's okay to kill one person or two in order to save thousands or end suffering for either thousands or for one. It's how Shaw, Sanger, and now the global warming nuts all end up into the same place where they're saying, well, so we have to eliminate a few people or throw them in prison because they disagree. Those in pain, those who are inferior, and I guess now those who are skeptics. They have convinced themselves that the world will be destroyed unless they step in to save the day. It is the ultimate God complex. Gee, who did we say on last night's show had a God complex? Oh yeah, that's right, George Soros. It is a sort of disease when you consider yourself some kind of God, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out. There are only two possible ways a society ends. If you believe in God, you believe in redemption. You believe the Messiah comes, and there's redemption, and it's a beautiful ending. But if you have a God complex, well, you know that it's going to end in chaos. There's always something that's going to destroy the world. I mean, first it was nuclear war, or world war, then it was nuclear war, then it was nuclear winter, then it was global cooling, then overpopulation, now it's global warming. Chaos. Chaos is the only end. If you don't believe in God, chaos is how it always will be. So somebody, the smart, the fit, those who understand, will step in and stop it. This is where we're headed. And I will show you where it goes next and how it travels from England to here and how much has already been accomplished and why you must vote. Coming up.
This little button here. Now everybody, please remember to read chapters 5 and 6 on volcanoes and glaciation.
If I were a mother of a suffering child, I would be the first to want, I mean a deeply suffering child, I would be the first to want to put a pillow over its face.
Dr. Peter Evans
as I would with any suffering thing. And I think the difference is that
with any suffering thing. I want to show you an ad that is now running in New York for climate change. Warning, shocking. Pull it full screen, please. Where do you get these ideas? But you're the fearmonger. You imagine opening up a magazine and seeing that with your child. Well, you get these ideas from the minds of monsters, progressives, the early 20th centuries, and the Fabian Socialists. Fabian Socialism is what we're talking about. The mentality spread to America, and it is here. The president's new head of Medicare and Medicaid, Don Berwick, who, by the way, was placed in power by the president who circumvented the system. Why would you have to do that? We told you under Obamacare there would be inevitably rationing. President said no. Every newspaper around, every journalist said that was crazy talk. But according to Berwick himself, quote, the decision is not whether or not we will ration care. The decision is whether we will ration with our eyes open. So who picks who lives or dies? Hopefully it's somebody as compassionate as that mother on the BBC. Here's why the stories from England matter. We will be there soon. Berwick has actually stated that he's in love with England's healthcare system. They got their system from Fabian Socialists, who founded the London School of Economics. They are the main think tank behind the Labour Party. They've got people drinking water from plants and having women have babies in corridors. A 22-year-old man died of thirst after begging for water and being completely neglected. Say what you will about our problems with our systems here, but no one has ever died of thirst at one of our hospitals. But has anyone ever died in the closet of a hospital here in America and put intentionally, compassionately into that closet so you couldn't hear the child's screams as it died? Yes. Yes, here in America. A baby that didn't die from an abortion was left in a U.S. hospital in Illinois, left in a laundry room so no one would hear. There was a law voted on to prevent this thing from ever happening again. But guess who didn't vote for it? Guess who showed up only to vote present? Illinois State Senator Barack Obama. Why? Oh, and the response to the UK hospital deaths was that the nurses have to sign a public pledge that they'll treat everyone with compassion and dignity. Yes, but I've heard compassion already today from someone.
If I were a mother of a suffering child, I would be the first to want, I mean a deeply suffering child, I would be the first to want to put a pillow over its face.
Dr. Peter Evans
as I would with any suffering thing. And I think the difference is that my...
Okay, here's a mother saying it's compassionate to smother. What's the difference? It's what happens when you're under the influence of a Fabian socialist or a progressive model. Human life is devalued, just as our dollar is being devalued, and they are connected. Because the only reason you would have to ration something like medical care is when there is a shortage of supply, of doctors, or of money. Suddenly, those who have to decide who lives or dies, they have to decide. You may have to decide. I'd feel better if we had to decide ourselves, but it's not. It's going to be in the hands of a government official, a progressive or a Fabian socialist like it is over in England. It's a cold calculation based on the greater good for society. It's called, look it up. Please don't take any of this myself. Look it up. Zeke Emanuel, White House. It's called the Complete Lives System. It's how George Bernard Shaw can propose lethal chambers. It's how this woman can advocate smothering children with pillows. It's how environmentalists can justify executing skeptics. It's how Obama's science czar, John Holdren, who believed in the wildly discredited idea of the population explosion, can propose putting sterilants in drinking water and forced sterilizations and a planetary regime, i.e. global government, to monitor global population size. It's for the greater good, you see. It's compassionate. It's not evil. They believe in these things. I want to show you a picture of Tony Blair. Now, this is Tony Blair, and he's standing in front of a window, stained glass window. This isn't about Tony Blair. It's about Tony Blair commemorating the 150-year birthday of George Bernard Shaw. The window that he's standing next to, can we pull a cleaner copy up or not? The window that he's standing next to, here it is. This is the Fabian Socialist window. It was commissioned by Shaw for the Fabian Socialist. Now, what's going on in the window? Well, they are fanning the flames with the bellows, and they are reshaping the world. They're helping to build a new world. How are they doing that? With hammers. This one is Shaw, along with the other founding members. By the way, that's founding member H.G. Wells on the bottom left that's doing this, a man who had an affair with none other than Margaret Sanger and predicted when the history of our civilization is written, it'll be a biological history and Margaret Sanger will be one of its heroines. How are they building the new world? How are they building it? With hammers. With hammers. Now, it's the power of persuasion. Here we are. Power of persuasion. Right? Or is it the, well, how was it? Was it that Andy Stern said again? I'm trying to remember.
We're trying to use the power of persuasion. And if that doesn't work, we're going to use the persuasion of power, because there are governments and there are opportunities to change laws that affect these companies. I'm not naive. We're ready to strike.
The persuasion of power. When we come back, a little more on this, and then I'm going to tie it all together and show you what's happening here. Next. America, the reason why you've not heard about the things we're talking about tonight, Fabian Socialism and the idea of the early 20th century progressive movement, is because it's very hard to explain, it's very complex, and they make you into a lunatic if you talk about it. That's why I ask you, don't believe anything that I say. Please don't take it as gospel. Look this all up yourself. You will be. I believe everybody on my staff, as they do research themselves, and I say, no, go get this, go get this, go this. I think they began not believing me. Now I think, I just talked to somebody in the control room, they said, I think it's very clear, Glenn, but horrifying. It is, especially when you start to see the pieces all come together, which we'll try to do for you tonight, but we're running out of time. Fabian Socialism, told you, started in England and has spread here. It has been here for a very long time. It is the same stock, just a different name, as the progressive movement. And they are using the persuasion of power. Let me show you the Fabian shield again. This is the shield. This is their coat of arms. Can you tell me what that is? That is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, why would you have that as your logo? There's another logo of the Fabian Socialist. It is this, the turtle, with the words underneath, when I strike hard. A turtle isn't exactly used as a common animal for imagery. Why the turtle? Because it's slow, steady, they make progress. And when they strike, it is the doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. He is gradually coming, but when he's ready, he strikes, and he strikes hard. And they are about to strike globally. I want to show you something that hit me this weekend when I heard about the elections in Brazil. Look at the globe and the elections and who's in charge. First we go to the UK. It all started there, Fabian Society. Did you know that since 1997 there have been around 200 Fabian MPs in the Commons, including nearly the entire cabinet, including Tony Blair? Australia, the new Prime Minister is in the Progressive Australian Party, was formerly in the Socialist Forum. Now she has denied that she's a communist. She told the press, and of course they didn't follow up on this, that she was just a secretary for the communists, licking envelopes. In Brazil, Lula, the Workers' Party, first elected in 2003. Well, he's picked his successor, and expected winner now is a woman. She's great. Don't worry about her. She was only a former Marxist guerrilla who was in prison in the 1970s in Brazil. Venezuela, we know about Hugo Chavez, United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Bolivia, movement towards socialism, first elected in 2005, re-elected in 2009, and reportedly eyeing a third term. Nicaragua, Ortega, Sandinista National Liberation Front, that's their Socialist Party. Greece, Prime Minister, Socialist Movement. Austria, Social Democratic Party. Oh, kind of like the people that were marching this last weekend at the mall. Portugal, Socialist Party, first elected 2005. Slovenia, Prime Minister, Social Democrat. And the United States, Barack Obama, a progressive. There's no star chamber here, gang. There's nothing. There's nothing. It's all out in the open, and you can find all of this information. And yet, they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they're starting to reveal their fangs. What I showed you from George Bernard Shaw, the eco-monsters, the baby smothering lady. Again, let me show you the eco-monster advertisement from here in New York. All of this might sound evil to you. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's not wrong, but this is evil. It is evil. How much more do your neighbors need before they start to wake up and start reading? Stop name-calling and just look at the facts. Let me go back to this, Rules for Radicals. Do you remember the dedication in the book, Rules to Radicals? It is this, quote, "To the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer." A book which is featured and highlighted on the NEA recommended reading list now. Saul Alinsky, quote, "Simple formula for success: agitate, aggravate, educate, and organize." That's up on the NEA website. You know, it's really strange. One of the early famous slogans for the Fabian Society was educate, agitate, and organize. May I ask, are you beginning to see why I have said the 40-day and 40-night challenge is important? I believe we are facing evil. Not that these people are evil, but why else would these people be in wolf in sheep's clothing? My grandma, what big teeth you have. The response was, yes, the better to eat you with, my dear. I started the top of the hour with problems, lots of problems. All of these problems that were on the website today, just economic problems. But don't you understand? All these problems are leading us to ask the kind sheep for the solution. The sheep are providing the solution, but they are not sheep. We are. They are the wolf. When you put all of this in context, you see how it's all coming together. Again, not in some conspiracy at all. You start to understand a few things. Again, like this quote from Barack Obama that was in Rolling Stone's magazine. He said, it's a point of view that I think is ultimately destructive for the long-term growth of the country that has a vibrant middle class and is competitive in the world. What is destructive? Fox. Well, yes, Mr. President. You're damn right. You're damn right. We are dangerous to this kind of ideology. We're shepherds. And we'll protect the flocks as long as we can. Flocks, time to wake up. I fear I'm going to run out of time tonight, but we will pick this up tomorrow, and this is a show that you need to watch, and then research on your own, please. Tonight you've heard about Fabian Socialism. You've heard about some famous Fabian Socialists, but why are we bringing it up? What relevance does this have to you today? To answer that, I want to introduce you to this gentleman. This guy's name, and you should have known him, but nobody's ever heard of him, Stuart Chase. Chase was a member of the Boston Fabian Club, and he wrote a little book here. It's called The Road We Are Traveling. I would tell you to read this book, but this book we had to have overnighted. I think we found this only in a library in Arkansas. This is the only one we could find of it. In this book, he outlined more than a dozen things that he observed that were happening that would result in replacing the free enterprise system. Now, he said the free enterprise system would be replaced by something he envisioned just called X, because the structure was still being molded. The names he threw around were socialism, state capitalism, which is exactly what the world is headed for, and that's what all the globalists call it, China, state capitalism, and fascism. However, he said these terms would only lead to confusion, so he only called it X. But here are the things that he saw. He said the first one is a strong centralized government. Now, do we have a strong centralized government? An executive arm growing at the expense of legislative and judicial arms. How many unelected czars are there in this administration? The number 3 thing on the list was control of credit, banking, and security exchanges by the government. bailouts, takeovers, massive new financial regulation. Another characteristic was the underwriting of employment by the government, either through armaments or public works. How about the temporary jobs for 225,000 census workers? Number 5, the underwriting of Social Security by the government, the old age mothers' pensions, unemployment insurance, and the like. Social Security, check. Old age pensions for unions, yeah. Union leaders, check. Unemployment insurance, done. If you look at this list, is there anything on this list that we haven't accomplished? Anything? And this is just the first baker's dozen. We'll give you a few more. And then why would we go to all the trouble to find this book when the war ends? Why would we go to all this trouble? Who cares? How's important? We'll tell you next. We have shown you some interesting Fabian socialist observations, things that would lead to replacing the free market that have been achieved here in America, done by a Boston Fabian Socialist member, Stuart Chase. Here he is. This is the Fabian Society, wolf in sheep's clothing. I think you would be on the wrong side if you, wouldn't you? Anyway, he put it all in a book called The Road We Are Traveling. We had a hard time finding this book. This is the only copy we could find, and we found it in a library in Arkansas. We are definitely traveling down this road. This is what he said. Strong centralized government, growing executive arm, control of the banking system, underwriting of employment by the government, underwriting of Social Security, underwriting of food, housing, medical care, use of deficit spending, the abandonment of gold, government control of foreign trade, control of natural resources, control of the energy sources, control of transportation, control of agricultural production. By the way, have you heard the new thing about farmers and dust? That if your dust blows to somebody else's, they can fine you on that. Anyway, enlistment of the Youth Corp. That's a fascinating one. I think I've heard that recently. Heavy taxation and state control of communications. Got it? Now, why does it matter? Why am I bringing up this little dusty book? This author, Stuart Chase, he observed capitalism being replaced slowly but surely. He wrote about this in 1932. He wrote about all of this, and he said, this is what's coming. Do you know why? Because he was the guy who wrote a book titled A New Deal. Sound familiar? Yeah. That New Deal. FDR made the New Deal a part of his speech when he accepted the Democratic presidential nomination the same year. He was part of FDR's kitchen cabinet. In 1937, the president told Chase's father that his son was teaching the American people more about economics than any of the others combined. Sadly, you may not know about Stuart Chase, the man who saw the future, the man who designed the New Deal, a Fabian Society member. Sadly, he's teaching us all a lesson that continues to this day. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Tonight, I want you to grab an ice cold Coca-Cola or whatever you have, just the most sugary corn syrup laden soda you can find, and chug it throughout the hour, because these may become a collector's item, believe it or not. But to understand the corn syrup and the trans fats and the salts in the restaurant and what now Bloomberg wants to do in New York, well, you have to leave this here in the present. Then you have to go back to the collapse. But to understand the collapse, you have to go back to the anti-war movement. Then you have to go back to the Home Energy Assistance Program in '81 and to the food stamps and LBJ. And you have to go back to the McCarthy era and what was happening in the McCarthy era and the communists, what happened there? What was that really all about? And you have to go back to Truman and FDR and the Social Security Act. But to really understand it, what you have to do is meet this gentleman in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt, a guy that every conservative should really look into because he's probably the best guy to really learn the lessons from. But to understand him, you have to know him, George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw, the playwright. How is knowing George Bernard Shaw going to help us understand what Bloomberg is doing with Coca-Cola. Oh, well, grab your Coke and try to grab a smile and come along. Hello, America. Last night I showed you the progressives. Actually, this is more than the progressives. This is the beginning of the progressive movement. These are the Fabian Socialists here. What they are capable. I showed you video I'm not going to show you tonight that I think is just horrifying. I had so much mail last night. People said, oh my gosh. Actually, many people said it was the most frightening show that we have done. I can relate. I remember the first day that I found the Fabian Socialist, and you're like, how did you not know about any of this? How do you not know about what these people have done and what they're capable of doing and how they relate to today? I showed you how they are seeking to mold a new world. Look at, here they are, molding a new world. They're hammering the world into remolding it nearer to their heart's desire. And the flames, fanning the flames to set the world on fire so they can shape it. Shape a new world through the destruction of the current one. And they're all coming in the cover of darkness. And here's their logo, right here. There's their shield. What is it? The Fabian Socialist? It's right here. It is a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what it is. Now, this is their idea. This isn't mine. This is why I have had a problem when I say, look, you want to have this discussion? Let's just have this discussion. Let's have it out in the open. But that's not what they do. These are the roots of modern progressivism, the Fabian Society, the doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. What does that mean? It means you just take things step by step by step before it's inevitable. My son, I drink Coke Zero. Sorry about that, Coke. Oh, now you're going to get all kinds of mail. How can you make a product, drinking, that's drunk by that monster Glenn Beck? I drink Coke Zero, and my son comes up and he'll say, can I have a sip? One. He'll have a sip, and he'll come back. Can I have a sip? All right. Before you know it, he's got the can and he's just chugging the whole thing. Gradualism. It's inevitable. He's going to drink it. Because I'm weak, and I'm not necessarily paying attention, and before you know it, he's had the whole can. And then I'm getting yelled at by Mom. All right. I could say this 1,000 times and it still won't be enough. Progressives do not look at the world the same way you do. Who has as their logo a wolf in sheep's clothing? When they gain control, it will turn ugly. Not because they're evil, just because they look at things radically different than you do. You saw their own words last night. Man is not meant to be controlled. Man is meant to be free. But progressives and progressives, like I said, Theodore Roosevelt in both parties, and Fabian Socialists believe that man cannot be free. They must tell you what to do because you're too stupid. They are doing it for the common good. They are not doing it necessarily with malice in their hearts. Man cannot be told what to eat, drink, drive, or say. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. But they don't believe in the Creator, and that is the problem. When people get a God complex and try to be the bearer of certain rights, it ends poorly every time. The nudge, while often well-intended, always turns into a shove. Look, I know you get this, but I am trying my best to give you information to help you wake your neighbors up. I don't know what else I can do. But the way of life in America is about to change. And that's not a good thing. Our corruption needs to change. Our treatment of each other, our coarseness, the things that the things that all of us have contributed in this society, including me, our coarseness, has to change. It has to. Great things can happen in America when people believe, and when they engage, and when they work together. But bad things happen when people don't believe that bad things can happen because we're America. We're entering a time when the leaves are changing. Let's look at the leaves of the tree. Are we going into winter, or are we looking for green shoots? Is spring around the corner? Remember, if you looked at that stained glass window, they had to put the globe into the fire. See the globe? See the color? It's not blue. It's hot. It's on fire. That's what you do with an anvil. You make it hot. You fan the flames with the bellows. You make it hot, and then you can pound it. So what are their goals, and what are the conditions? How are they fanning the flames? Well, let's look at the flames that are being fanned right now. You have to have a struggling economy. Got that. High unemployment. Sure. High dependence on government. 41 million people now are on U.S. food stamps. 41 million people. You have to have uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And fear. Alan Greenspan actually had the cojones to come out and say, it's fear that is undermining the recovery. If we just knew the truth, everything would be peachy. Really? Well, the government wouldn't even tell us the truth on the oil spill. Why would they tell us the truth, for the love of Pete, on the dollar? I'm not sure what Alan Greenspan is reading. I want to thank Alan for stopping by after he caused the mess that we're in now, or helped cause it. Alan actually was on television at one point saying, I don't even know what a CDO is. I mean, I couldn't even understand it. Oh, really, Alan? Thank you. Why don't you zip it for a while? Maybe he's reading the White House blog and he's getting all this good news and all of these things that, hey, everything's great, but people are being scaredy cats. Well, I think if you read the newspaper and you say, we are great, you're in denial. I was reading BusinessInsider.com, told you about this yesterday. They had a list, a bunch of troubling signs on the economy. You don't have to go and you just read the front page of theblaze.com, foxnews.com, the Drudge Report. Just read it. Just read it. And you can see the signs if you care to look. I've told you before, what you need to do is look at what smart money is doing. My grandfather told me that when he lived through the Depression, the rich got richer. If you had money, you were okay. If you had a job, you were okay. Well, that implies that there were some people in the know. That should give you a hint. What are they doing? Well, they certainly know what is coming before you do. This article shows where the smart money is going, along with other troublesome signs. And here are just a few of them. Corporate insiders are fleeing the U.S. stock market, as is George Soros. Zero Hedge reports that insiders are selling to buying 2,341 to 1. Now, what does that mean? Do you remember Ken Lay at Enron? He was at shareholder meetings saying, you've got to buy, everything is great. And meanwhile, he's selling everything? Well, this isn't much different. The officers and the directors of the companies are selling their stocks, over 2,000 of them, for every one that they're buying. What does that tell you? And I'm talking about major corporations, not ones that you think are like unstable. The uber wealthy, and I'm talking again about spooky dude George Soros, billionaire wealthy, they are buying tons of gold, literally. According to Reuters, UBS is recommending top-tier clients hold 7 to 10% of their assets in precious metals like gold. JP Morgan just reopened their gold vault, which had been closed since 1990 amid soaring demand and prices for gold. Many are predicting that gold will start to become scarce. By the way, I'd just like to ask, Wiener, are you investigating UBS or JP Morgan? Because you should, because they're recommending buying gold too. Or are they in on it too? Not coincidentally, gold hit a day-high record of more than $1,342.60 on Tuesday. Silver, 30-year high, Platinum is at its highest since mid-May. Copper closed at a 26-month high. Also, according to Reuters, the U.S. Mint has run out of a type of highly pure gold coin that it had been selling amid record high prices of gold. But the mint is out. The United States Mint has depleted its inventory of 2010 American Buffalo 1-ounce gold bullion coins. I have a hunch it isn't the demand of the popularity of the Buffalo this season. There is an unusually high option volume right now, which is an indicator that insiders know the leaves are changing, and they choose options over actually buying stock. The uber wealthy are also putting down large options against betting against the S&P 500. What does that mean? It means the smart money is saying the market is going to tank this month. Now, I'm hoping they're wrong, and a lot of people, I mean, don't listen just to the market. Listen to your gut. I'm just telling you what is happening here. Earlier this week, Japan cut interest to almost zero and set up a 5 trillion yen quantitative easing fund. What's that? That's what you do when you want to increase the money supply. Printing. The risk there, of course, is hyperinflation. Here at home, the Federal Reserve in New York and the Federal Reserve in Chicago are begging the Fed to do more stimulus. The New York Fed chair said the current outlook on jobs and inflation is unacceptable. And that means another $1 trillion in stimulus. I heard some clown running for office this week actually come out in Chicago and say, you know, this is such a myth that we're running a deficit and we can't handle this debt. Are you kidding me? Another $1 trillion in stimulus is being proposed now. Add that to the $787 billion stimulus of Barack Obama and the George Bush $700 billion TARP bailout and the $17.4 billion auto bailout. Current national debt, over $13 trillion. And Barack Obama by himself has added almost $2 trillion to that himself. By the way, I think it was Harvard University, or is it BU? I think it was Harvard University said that the real debt, the liabilities, is $200 trillion. All of the money on earth is about $50 trillion. At the end of last month, the Feds announced $30 billion bailout of the U.S. wholesale credit union system. But they said, don't worry about it, because it's all backed up, get this one, by $50 billion in troubled assets inherited from failed institutions. So we're banking that the troubled assets that caused the other institutions to fail are somehow or another going to save these troubled assets for the... Does that make any sense to you? The dollar is continuing its slow decline. And every time I hear that, I think of spooky dude George Soros saying, the dollar needs a managed decline. Really? Does it? Oil is currently at $84 a barrel. It held fairly steady there while gas prices are declining. Why is there demand for oil when we have record reserves of gasoline that no one is buying? Did you know that we have record reserves of gasoline? We're in a slowdown now. Are you going on all the trips that you would like to? Why would we be buying oil? Why? It's a commodity. Oh, and one more thing. As the value of the dollar falls, it takes more of those dollars to buy that same barrel. The Saudis don't care. The Saudis are like, I don't care what you do to your dollar. We'll just, oh, it went up. You're inflating it by 2%? Oh, yeah. Here's the price of oil, just went up 2%. That's the way it works. And the last couple, perhaps the most disturbing. Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, GMAC, all suspended foreclosures. Now, this is both good and bad. If there's bad things going on, we've got to find out about it. But I want you to think this one through, America. Think about it. You're not paying for your house because you're in trouble. And you're not making the payment, and the banks refuse to foreclose on it because the government is saying they can't. Okay, that's good for you, the home buyer. But now let's think this through. Let's look at everybody. I mean, I've never done anything, you know, I was going to say in my life, but I did most of my life this way. I've tried not to do anything in the last 10 years in my life that isn't good for everybody involved. If I go to into business with somebody, if it's bad for them, it's bad for me then too in the end. It's got to be good for all of us. So let's look at all of the partners. Is that good for the bank? Okay. Do you think any neighbors will say, well, if you're not paying and they're not going to foreclose, I'm kind of having tough times too. I'm not going to pay either. If I'm the bank, if I can't take the collateral, if you said you would pay and you can't, and now I can't take that house and resell it, well, why would I take the risk? If I can't get the money back or the collateral, why would I take the risk? If the government won't allow me to collect. If there's corruption at the banks, it needs to be found, and it needs to be found quickly. As this drags on, and it will, it brings the mortgage industry to a grinding halt. If banks can't foreclose, well, then they can't loan either. Why would you loan if you can't be guaranteed that you're going to get something back? And if banks won't loan, well, then how do you buy a house? How do you sell your house? Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi and 30 other geniuses in Congress are moving to investigate foreclosure practices of U.S. mortgage lenders. Gee, I wonder if the mortgage companies will be painted as the big evil corporations who are kicking people out into the streets while the greedy, evil CEO gets a bonus. Look for a punishment followed by a necessary takeover of another industry that's too big to fail. Well, actually, it won't be a takeover, not in a socialistic sense. It'll just be a little bit of control. Let me go back to this book that I showed you yesterday. It's written by Stuart Chase. I showed you this and I told you we had a hard time finding it. You can't find this in New York. We had to go, I think, to a library in Arkansas to actually find it. This isn't a well-known book. It is written by Stuart Chase, The Road We Are Traveling, 1914 to 1942. This is what he said. He said, something's happening to capitalism. He wrote this in the 1940s. Something's happening to capitalism. It's either turning into fascism, communism, or state capitalism, which is what China is, which they say now is the new model. He says free enterprise, but we're just going to call it turning into something marked X. When he gets to property, he says, there's not much taking over of property or industries in the old socialistic sense. Listen to this. The formula appears to be control without ownership. It is interesting to recall the same formula is used by the management of great corporations in depriving stockholders of power. You got it? Who is this guy? You should know this man because he's the guy who coined the phrase the New Deal. If you look at what he talks about in the 40s about what's coming and how you just take over industries, you don't just seize them because that's too socialistic. It is exactly what Barack Obama has done. They took over control of industries. Put yourself in the progressive mindset. Put yourself, put the stained glass window back up. Put yourself in the progressive mindset that the free market is evil and must be stopped. They are pounding at the globe to reshape it nearer to their heart's desire. I'll have more on that in a few minutes because that's one line of a very famous poem that people don't know, and you have to understand the poem. Not enough people get that there are people on earth that want to remake the globe, fundamentally transform. Progressives have been playing this game for a very long time, and it is a vicious cycle, and it only ends up in even more government control. Back in a minute. I heard a story today that practically blood just about shot out of my eyes, and it was this one. New York City and state want the U.S. Department of Agriculture to ban the use of food stamps to buy sugary soft drinks for 2 years to curb obesity-related diseases among the city poor. So that would be this. They say the soft drinks are the largest single contributor to the obesity epidemic. Probably true. Bloomberg and Patterson made a joint statement in this. First reaction to the story this morning was the wrong reaction. It was good. Good. You take government assistance, then they have every right to tell you. It was the wrong reaction. But it's partially true. Our parents told us, at least mine did, I'm sure yours did too, as long as you live under my roof, you will play by my rules, you'll eat what's put on your plate. When you get a job, right? Well, when we take handouts from the government, we are under their roof, and we have to do it their way. That's what I've been warning about. Benjamin Franklin, however, you know, there's a reason why Benjamin Franklin, I chose him to be the model of charity. Benjamin Franklin was an amazing, amazing man. Charity he understood. And what did he say about it? He said, the best way to help people is to make people uncomfortable in their poverty. It's the fastest way to get them out of their poverty. Well, the government has been doing the exact opposite. They encourage people who would otherwise never dream of using food stamps to use them. Watch.
Introducing SNAP. It helps you eat right when money's tight.
Wait, excuse me. Did you say SNAP?
Yes. SNAP is the new name for the federal food stamp program. Lots of people with low income qualify for SNAP but don't know it. If you qualify, you'll get a card you can use to buy all sorts of food, including fruits and vegetables. It works like a bank card when you check out.
A card? Like the one you swipe and goes beep?
Yes, that's right. SNAP offers help to all kinds of people.
So wait, can I be eligible if I have a job?
Yes, you can if your income's low.
But I have a car.
No problem. You may still qualify.
But I own my own house, so can I still qualify?
Yes, you might.
Boy, that goes to Cloward and Piven. Get as many people onto the system as you can. I don't know the situation and what they're creating here, but is that who you think of needs food stamp system? I mean, you know, you got a car, you have your own house. I know things can get really tight, and I don't mean to judge anyone, but is that who we're targeting? Back in April, President Obama changed the income limitations in order to greatly expand the number of families that qualify for food stamps. People can now earn up to 200% of the poverty level and still qualify for food stamps. The campaign seems to be working. We have just set a new record, gang. 41.8 million people are now using food stamps. Now, why would we be trying to get more people on food stamps? Let's go back to New York City. What are they doing? They're telling you that you cannot purchase these with food stamps because you're Homer Simpson. You just don't know. You're going to choose wrong and the wrong kind of food. So the government will choose for you. If you're one of those 41.8 million, wake up. They're going to tell you exactly what to eat. And as long as you take their gifts, they have the right to do it. Think of what the guy has to say now behind the counter to you. See, look at how this, it's not only that they're going to tell people with food stamps that they can't have this, but the person at the 7-Eleven counter, you come up, you've got Doritos and a soda and food stamps. Now that guy's in the position where he has to play the food police. At the same time, in places like California, they want to legalize marijuana. They want to legalize marijuana, but soda is a no-no. Let me tell you something quickly on the marijuana thing. Weimar legalized everything that could help people be distracted before the trouble came. More importantly, this one is about getting young voters out. But I digress. Back to the soda. Soda taxes have already happened in Washington State, Philadelphia. New York and others have been trying to get a soda tax passed as well. So let me ask you this. If you're trying to create jobs, how's this going to help Coca-Cola? This is the MO for progressives, control. It's exactly why we've been warning you with government health care. Let me ask you this. They're doing it now. They want to do it here in New York and New York State, and it will happen because you're living under their roof. But let me ask you this with health care. Won't you be living under their roof with health care? You'll have to play by their rules. If this is the leading cause of obesity, well, are you going to be able to buy soda? I've shown you this week their rules are cold and calculated. 1913, Teddy Roosevelt. Just bought this today. We wouldn't tell the store in New York who it was for because, quite honestly, I don't know if they would have sold it to me. Teddy Roosevelt battle flag, the Progressives, 1912. This is an original handkerchief. By 1920, this is when they started the progressive movement. By 1920, in an era without television, without radio, without mass media, anything that was mass to spread the news quickly, people had seen enough of progressives. They were done with them. They were horrified by progressives. From 1912 to 1920, progressives were in a shambles. The federal income tax, 1913, enacted. Promise always to keep the rate low. Top rate 1913, 7%. 1918, keep it low. Turned into 77%. During that same period, the lower rates never climbed over 6%. So, even though most people were virtually paying nothing in taxes, people were so spooked by progressives, by the way, can't drink anymore, it's bad for your health. They started slashing taxes, and by 1925, the top tax rate was back down to 25%. The lowest bracket was back down to 1.5. Progressives are the same now as they were then. Ask Hillary Clinton. They have just packaged it better this time. They've just packaged it. They learn from their mistakes. The question is, will we? Yesterday, I started to tell you about Fabian Socialism and the influence that it has here in America. I had so much mail on it, and I tell you this every day, or I try to. Do not take my word for anything. Please, please. I don't ever want to hear you in an argument with somebody and saying, well, Glenn Beck told me. Don't. Don't quote me. Please. Know it yourself. Do your own homework. It's the only way that you'll be strong enough to be able to stand, is if you know it to the core. Don't take my word for it. Do your own homework. Find out that these things are true. Now, here are some people that were influenced by the Fabians. We have Stuart Chase. He coined the phrase, the New Deal. We also have Cecil Rhodes. He is the Rhodes Scholar fame, and Bill Clinton and so many others were Rhodes Scholar. This is a Fabian Socialist. Walter Lippmann, and of course, George Soros. Spooky dude. Saying now, I think, now, in the end, do you understand the power of the dark side? And then you see the lightning bolts shooting from his fingertips. Is it just me? Anyway, I want to go back to the stained glass window from the Fabian Society because it explains so much. And there is a method to my madness here. You have to understand the history. I showed you at the beginning of the time board. You can't understand anything unless you look at this from a very long line. I want to show you the stained glass window, and I want to show you what's here. If you look at the stained glass window and you see here, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. I was curious about that. What is that? Well, this window is originally from the Beatrice Webb House in Surrey, England, former headquarters of the Fabian Society. Fabian Society is still around. Tony Blair is a Fabian member. I can't tell you how many people are Fabian Socialists all over the world. This was designed by George Bernard Shaw, who is here, the guy who invented the death chamber for the death camps. George Bernard Shaw. It depicts Sidney Webb and Shaw striking the earth here with hammers. But do you notice the earth is red hot? Here they are, stoking the flames to heat the earth up so they can hammer it, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. Well, what is that line from? Well, it's a line from Omar Khayyam. It's very interesting. Remold it nearer to the heart's desire, if you understand the whole poem. Could you take this down for a second? Let me show you this. Let me show you the wolf in sheep's clothing. There it is, wolf in sheep's clothing. This is the Fabian Society, FS, Fabian Society shield. It is a wolf with sheepskin covered. Now, why would you do that if you were a happy place? Above the globe is that. The window is now on display at the London School of Economics, which was founded by 4 Fabians, including Sidney and Beatrice Webb. Now, I want to show you the rest of this poem. This is what the whole stanza here. Here's the last line that's on the stained glass window. Ah, love, could thou and I with fate conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire? Would we not shatter it to bits and then remold it nearer to the heart's desire? So, could you and I conspire with fate to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire and then shatter it to bits and remold it nearer to the heart's desire? The problem is, gang, this sounds crazy, but they're doing it. And it's not because they're evil. This is the root of American progressivism. I'm not telling you Fabian Society because it's irrelevant. your new prime minister in Australia, I believe, is a Fabian Society member. Tony Blair was Fabian Society. England is riddled with Fabian Society members. These are the early 20th century American progressives. And these tactics are used here now. They're doing it. We showed you last night the 18 characteristics of replacing the free market system with what they said was state capitalism or socialism or fascism. In this book, they say that could be it, but we're just going to call it X for now. Stuart Chase wrote about this in this book. It's very hard to find. It is The Road We're Traveling. I showed you yesterday. All 18 of them have been accomplished now. And some of them are being done right now for state capitalism. So who are these people? Well, Stuart Chase, he graduated from Harvard in 1910. That was the same year that this guy did, Walter Lippmann, who shaped Woodrow Wilson's 14 points for the League of Nations, which then failed then, but then later came back just under a new name, the United Nations. Lippmann said, quote, "I've come around to socialism as a creed. I do believe in it passionately and fearlessly. Not that all men are created equal, for that's a misapplication of democracy. I believe that the people must express themselves in an organized society where religion is the dynamic." These were the American pioneers of Fabian Socialists throughout America. Lippmann carried it to the Wilson administration, later as an award-winning journalist, writing a syndicated newspaper column. Every journalist in America studies Walter Lippmann as he remolds the minds of journalists. Chase is the one that brought it to FDR. But to find the core of the insidious movement, we have to travel across the pond to Great Britain, where you'll find another man you've heard of 1,000 times because his legacy lives on. Cecil Rhodes. Ever heard of the Rhodes Scholarship? When he was 23, Rhodes wrote, "Why should we not form a secret society, but with one object, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole world under British rule for the recovery of the United States?" The recovery of the United States? "For making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire." There's your racism and eugenics again. What a dream, but yet it is probable, it is possible. Still, he went on to run De Beers Consolidated Mines, which at one point owned 90% of the world's production of diamonds. Isn't it interesting that all of the radical socialists were almost all wildly successful capitalists? It makes me think of this guy, de Tocqueville. This is democracy in America. Part one is how great it is and how it's going to change the world. Part two is, by the way, they're going to become people who try to change it and slam the door shut behind them because they'll have so much wealth. Now, this may all seem like ancient history, but I want to tie it next into the present. Stand by. Fabian Socialist. Until this week, you may never have even heard of Fabian Socialist. How is it all tied to Coca-Cola and Bloomberg? Well, they were the foundation of modern-day socialism and progressivism. We've talked about the man who coined the phrase the New Deal with his book, Stuart Chase, right here. Walter Lippmann. Walter Lippmann here. He was all over this area. And the Rhodes Scholarship legacy left by Fabian Socialist co-founder Cecil Rhodes. In 1895, four people, four Fabians, started the London School of Economics. It is where the Fabian Society stained glass window now resides. It is the school where years later, all the way down here in 1949, a Hungarian named George Soros would enroll. He would graduate. He'd learn a lot there. He'd eventually move to New York and build a massive financial portfolio with what he learned. He became one of the world's most successful hedge fund managers, and by 1992, he was the guy that was given the title, the man who broke the Bank of England in 1992. This is when he speculated and helped devalue the British currency. But we all lovingly know this spooky dude is the man who funds the Center for American Progress, Free Press, Jim Wallace's Sojourners, the Tides Foundation, and a ton of other left-wing groups. His twisted and dangerous philosophy, in my opinion, was developed in Britain in the late 19th century, down here, and it is spread like a plague all the way through. All the way through. It has changed America. It is being shattered into bits, America is, right before our eyes, so they can remold it nearer to their heart's desire. I believe they have a God complex. They think they can tell you what to drink, tell you what to drive, tell you how to spend, tell you what war should be fought, which shouldn't be, what charity is. They should do all of those things. Soros said, quote, "It is sort of a disease when you consider yourself some kind of God, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out." Luckily, America has a different understanding of what God is. Only one God will win this battle. Have you made a choice yet? Because I'm going with the God that has a capital G and then only 3 letters in his name. You'll have to make your own choice. But remember this, do your own homework. Find out if these things are true yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do your own homework. And then tell a friend. Because remember, sunlight is the best disinfectant. A friend of a Fabian Socialist and the guy who learned his lesson with Rudyard Kipling. He wrote a poem called The God of the Copybook Heading. Copybook headings were the things that we all agreed on at the beginning. They just said, you know, God is good, and kids would write it down. God is good to practice their penmanship. I'm just going to give you a couple of things here. He learned his lesson, and this is what he wrote after he saw Fabian Socialism. "With the hopes that our world is built on were utterly out of touch, they denied that the moon was Stilton, and they denied that she was even Dutch. They denied that wishes were horses. They denied that pigs had wings. So we worship the gods of the market who promised these beautiful things. They promised perpetual peace. They swore if we give them our weapons, the wars of the tribes would cease. But then we disarmed. They sold us and delivered us bound to our foe, and the gods of the copybook heading said, 'Stick to the devil you know.' We were promised the fuller life, which started by loving our neighbor and ended by loving his wife, till our women had no more children, and the men lost reason and faith, and the gods of the copybook headings said the wages of sin is death. We were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay for collective Paul. But though we had plenty of money, there was nothing our money could buy. And the gods of our copybook headings said, 'If you do not work, you will die.' Then the gods of the market tumbled, and their smooth-tongued wizards withdrew. And the hearts of the meanest were humbled, and they began to believe that it were true, that all that is gold, it does not glitter, and 2 and 2 make 4. And the gods of the copybook headings limped up to explain it once more. As it will be in the future, it was at the birth of man. There are only 4 things certain since social progress began. The dog returns to its vomit, and the sow returns to his mire, and the burnt, fooled, bandaged finger goes back to the wobbling fire." I'm out of time. You have to read the last stanza yourself. Uh-oh, was that a trick to get you to look this up? Gods of the Copybook Headings, Rudyard Kipling. Read, learn it.